capitalists. So there's deep, well, you must know this, right?
Yes, my president is anti.
There's deep anti-Americanism in South America.
Yeah, in the last 10 years, I would say.
Even well
really
beyond
strong.
that, Salvador Allende in Chile and so forth, right? He was assassinated, some say by the CIA. So there's a very deep Marxist anti-capitalist strain in South America, and deep anti-Americanism. So political elites, in some political elites in South America, so you've had a lot of military regimes, right?
Yes.
That have been pro-American, more or less, right?
And we've had actually, in Ecuador until this last government, we had American bases.
Right, yes, because America has seen that as its sphere of influence.
Yeah.
And you've had, on the other hand, a kind of a Marxist, it's a rather tragic story, right? And the long road to democracy, and it's starting to emerge now. So Chavez is a kind of a latter-day example of these quasi-Marxist leaders in South America, that for reasons that are sometimes justifiable and sometimes because he's basically his fond de commerce is anti-Americanism. A lot of South Americans are anti-American, right? There's a deep-seated resentment.
I think there's like a resentment in the lower mid classes because they say that they came and stole our resources, basically. With the petrol companies and Shell.
But these demagogues also whip up those classes, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of your upper middle class elites are very much in favor of the Western capitalist model.
Yeah, it's
right?
more the uneducated who are convinced by these demagogues, basically.
But then America becomes the other, the foreign oppressor, right?
Yes,
it's like a lot of the Roman Empire was, it's like, Vercingetorix, right? In France, right? The plucky Gauls against the Roman Empire, right?
Asterix and Obelix.
Well, Asterix is the cartoon character, but the real character is Vercingetorix, right? So the idea of, the common Gauls against the Roman Empire, right?
Yes.
And that's why Asterix is a national hero, right? He's seen as a kind of a
patriot.
And so he was the one that helped. So Vercingetorix was the Chavez of the Gauls against the Romans, right?
Yeah, but I would say it's kind of, in our case, it's a little hypocritical because they're fighting for this socialist regime when they themselves have so much money and they have Louis Vuitton bags and they have.
Who does?
Chavez.
Oh, Chavez, yeah.
Or my president, or
these
Castro.
guys. Well, these guys are like everybody else. They're giving all kinds of their money, like Gaddafi. In the Middle East, it's a little bit different because you had a colonial situation there, where Morocco was, and
in
also
Morocco it's very different.
And also in.
We had some good relationship with America because they trying to save our south part because they had problems.
But they weren't France.
Algeria.
The one good thing about America was they weren't France, right?
Yes.
Because France was the colonial power, right?
But now it's not the.
Right, but there are a couple of things in the Middle East that are a bit different. Religion is the main to differentiate, right? Because you had the Catholic religion. So the identity system is based on Islam, so you have religiousness. But politically speaking, in terms of soft power, politically speaking, a lot of the political elites are basically client states of America, right?
Yes.
Like Saudi Arabia, which is why they have military bases there. And so basically the deal between the United States and the countries in the Middle East is largely based on we will protect you, you will be our client state, you will give us a guaranteed access to your resources, and in terms of the symbolic domination, in terms of religion, all that, we'll let you dominate your populations, right? Which is why Hillary Clinton will make a big stink about injustices in certain countries, but never talk about Saudi Arabia, right? About women not being able to drive in Saudi Arabia, or women getting stoned or something for adultery. They never say that because they have a deal, right?
Yeah, they can't interfere.
They have a deal. You give us the oil, we'll protect you, but we'll take care. So in terms of the soft power, they don't push it hard, right? Because it can be destabilizing. Because one thing about soft power, it's destabilizing. When people want access to values and they want access to different ways of behavior. Where you saw a lot of soft power being mobilized was in Egypt and Tunisia, right? Notably in Egypt, right? Where you had Facebook and Twitter and a whole generation of educated people that were unemployed, young people, suddenly having these tools, Facebook, and communicating on Facebook,
So they use
and,
these
and
social
yeah,
networks.
and starting to use this to mobilize. And so in other words, they were using essentially Western instruments, right? And the reason why there was a lot of stability in these countries like Syria and Egypt and Libya and Tunisia was because they were autocratic states, right? And so young people didn't have any access to communication tools to share consciousness because you couldn't talk or you couldn't have a meeting, right? Association was banned, right? It maybe is in Morocco too, right?
Yes, but
Because you
in
can't,
Morocco
your king, Hassan II,
no, not
he used to put people in jail
yes.
for
It's
saying
more,
things.
it's more we have
Right,
kind of democracy.
but you couldn't voice any contract. But now with these networks, Facebook and Twitter, people can actually communicate, right? And they have. I know I have a student from Saudi Arabia who tells me I have one personality in Saudi Arabia, then I go online on Facebook and I have a completely different personality. They have a two-personality system. So that is the latest wave of sort of soft power, right?
Yeah, I was thinking about like if you thought that social networks and the search
Yeah.
engines like Google
Yeah.
are increasing soft power like
That's
massively.
why China bans Google,
Yeah,
bans
they ban
Facebook, bans all of them,
Yes.
because they represent a soft power resource coming from the West, right? And they can be very destabilizing, right? Because they're open networks. And that's why we saw what happened in Egypt and Tunisia and Libya, and now what's going on in Syria. We haven't seen anything in Saudi Arabia yet, because these are countries where the coercive elements of religion and monarchy are extremely very heavy, right?
Yeah.
And also the State Department and the CIA they would think twice about destabilizing that, right?
Yes.
Because the State Department doesn't care about destabilizing this. We bombed Libya, French in England, right? We bombed it, right? The CIA was operating, but to destabilize Saudi Arabia would be like, we'll destabilize Iran, right? And Iran used to be very pro-Western, right? Under the Shah, before the revolution, right? So there's a country where soft power can become a destabilizing force, right?
Yeah.
And so it almost did in 2009. There was a riots in the streets, right? So yeah, no, Google and Facebook and Twitter and the web generally is a soft power resource, which can be extraordinarily destabilizing because it gives people a desire to have access to values and a way of behaving, right? Just sharing information. You and I can get together and start up a club and go on the web and say Sarkozy is this or whatever. You can't do that in Saudi Arabia, right? Yeah. So and so when you have these resources that allow people to do that, so it can change things in a big way, right? Because young people in these countries now say, hey, we want to be able to share information. And so where did that idea come from, right? Well, it came from the technology and it came from this. Look, this thing. I mean, do you know how much of an influence this thing had on world politics? The capacity to film a video in the streets of Syria and put the video on YouTube so the whole world sees policemen shooting at people? That's incredible.
It's incredible, it's true.
They used to be able to what they did to make sure that didn't happen was they wouldn't allow the BBC to come in, right, at the airport. So there would be no film of anything, right? Now they can't stop any film. Film just, kids go like that and they put it on YouTube, right?
But now do you think that with the extreme governments that still exist in South America and in the Middle East, they actually do something, do they actually have policies that try to, influence those governments to leave or to change their way of thinking? For example, with Chavez or with, I can't think of a government in the Middle East. Do they actually do something or do they just try and...
Well, sometimes they use the technology to try to spy on their citizens and so forth, right?
Yeah.
And they're monitoring the web to see what they're saying. I hear Chavez is on Twitter himself, right?
Well, South America, I don't know, I'm being very negative, but I think we're...
What kind of government do you have in Ecuador?
It's Chavez too, actually. It's Rafael Correa. He's pretty crazy as well.
Is that guy with the black hair?
He has black hair, he wears suits and indigenous...
Is he a left-wing demagogue?
Very, very left-wing.
What kind of resources do you have there?
Oil.
We have oil, huh?
Oil. So we had Chevron, which was there...
Who has the wealth? Just elite?
I mean,
Are there a
we're
lot
not,
of poor people?
yes, but it's not as extreme as in other countries. We're not that bad.
What's
but we
the
do have,
population?
13 million.
Small.
Yeah.
And what's your capital again?
Quito.
All right, okay.
I mean, we have like just recently with there was a scandal with WikiLeaks. They had to expel the American ambassador. I mean, our relations with the U.S. right now aren't that great.
Right, Ecuador, right.
Yeah, and we're like very, very close to Chavez and Castro and Morales in Bolivia.
Right, yeah, right, Bolivia, yeah. Who was the,
Evo Morales, it's the one that wears a poncho and a hat.
That's right, yeah. And is our politics corrupt?
Very.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's that they sell this
Every
populist
regime seems to be. Who was the country? Was it Peru with the Japanese guy?
Yeah, that's Fujimori.
I mean, they had a Japanese guy, and people thought, oh, well, I guess he might not be corrupt, right? Well, he turned out to be just as corrupt as everybody else.
Yeah. And right now they have another one that's even worse, which is Ollanta Humala, which is also a follower of Chavez. Right now there's like a whole axis.
They all
of
like Chavez?
people. Yeah, the thing is that he has money. So he funds
From oil?
all of us. Yeah.
From oil?
He has a massive, massive reserve of oil. So.
Right. Oh. So you're going to go back to South America?
Yeah, hopefully.
To Ecuador?
I want to.
What do you want to do there?
I mean, there's a lot to do. There's a lot of opportunities. I see more opportunities there than here right now.
But business?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that since we're growing, there's a lot of things that don't exist there that I could maybe do myself or...
And how long are you staying here for?
This is my 6th year abroad.
6?
Yeah, this is my 6th
In
year.
France or?
I did 1 year in France, then I did a degree of 4 years in Spain.
In Spain, okay.
And I did an exchange in Australia and here in
Okay.
Paris, and now I'm back in Paris.
And where will you go after France? No.
Doing an internship here, hopefully.
Yeah.
And then maybe stay here maximum a year and then I'll go back.
Oh. And are you going to go back to Morocco?
After 2 or 3 years of experience, I think. Yes.
You're going to stay? You want to stay?
Stay here.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Well, good luck with your project, and let me know.
Oh, and I wanted to ask you one last question.
Right.
Do you have any sources or anything that's objective and reliable where we can continue our research?
On soft power?
Yes.
The more recent debate, I think what you should do is just go to Google and Google Joseph Nye, because he's still writing about it. NYE.
Okay.
And there was a piece on the National Public Radio recently, just last week on soft power, I think. NPR, National Public Radio.
Mm-hmm.
So if you put soft power NPR, you'll see that.
Okay.
But Joseph